Well, greetings out there in YouTube land, and welcome to today's big video, which started out featuring a fairly routine repair of an amplifier that was sent to us. But in the midst of it, I decided to open a gift from a very generous viewer. And the contents of that box was so extraordinary that I thought, you know, I'd be better off featuring it in this month's video. So without further ado, let's go out in the workshop and get started. Mitzi, the shop cat, has informed me that it's time to take a little break from today's video and open this very large and interesting box that was sent to us by a generous viewer in Hugo, Colorado. Contains a gift. So let's get that box open and do as Mitzi suggested. See what our gift is. Good girl. Well, lo and behold, it's a Tel-Ray super organ tone, just like the one we featured in a video a couple years ago. You know, it's a filthy mess, if I may say so, with plenty of kidney exudate on top, but it looks to me like underneath all that it's in virtually perfect condition. Okay, so let's get started. You know what I'm going to do before I even start work on this is clean the outside surface, because it's pretty nasty. Okay, let's get it all cleaned up and then we'll take it apart and see what kind of condition it is inside. Well, how about that? A little 409 and a toothbrush and some Chemical Guys tire shine, and this jewel could pretty well pass for new. Even the front panel, it's glossy, has all its paint, it's beautiful. Okay, now let's take it apart and see what kind of shape it is on the inside. The condition of this device is just astoundingly original. The other one I worked on had no back door and didn't have the bracket for winding the cord. Here we see the original cord. God knows how long it's been wound around there, and the Tel-Ray electronics tag. You can see all the dust that's accumulated under here, which I'll clean out, of course, once the cabinet is empty. But I just wanted to share that with you. I've never seen the back door in one of these before, and I'll tell you, it's pretty impressive. Well, I removed the 4 screws holding in the back door, and I found that the reason it quit working is the engineer died. Okay, so I think it's time to give him a decent burial, clean out all the vestiges of his original home, and pull this jewel out of the cabinet and check it out. Everything from here looks perfectly original and complete and absolutely wonderful. Okay, so let's take care of our little pal. Okay, now the back door is all cleaned up on the outside and the inside. It occurred to me that probably was a brown recluse spider. I don't know what its lifespan is. It spent it inside this cabinet apparently. I know it's probably longer than my lifespan would have been if it were alive when I opened it. Okay, so let's undo the screws here that are holding the chassis and oil can mechanism in place and slide them out. You know, Tel-Ray must have had some pretty good engineers on board. First of all, they made this work and create some of the most unbelievable audio effects that you can imagine. Secondly, they were clever enough to make it easy to work on. Both the chassis and the electromechanical oil can device are secured to this piece of plywood here at the bottom. All I had to do was remove 3 nuts and bolts, and then there's 1, 2, 3, 4 screws, and the whole interior unit will slide forward and out of the cabinet. Well, the interior cleaned up perfectly. Just a little dusty. Got rid of those spider webs. We've got to wonder who Mr. S was. who's probably involved in the creation of this nice cabinet. But now it's all cleaned up, I'm going to set it aside and we can focus on the electromechanical portion of this device. Okay, first off, there's all sorts of writing here on the big drive wheel, all from 1968. D and I. I wonder if I was inspected. Also, I don't believe this thing's ever been worked on, so what I'll do is go over it very slowly so you can see every detail. So if you're working on one and you're missing some pieces, or you wonder how an original one was configured, this will give you a really good opportunity to see it. All the shielded cables. The wheel turns easily, which in my experience is unusual. You can see here we've got shields over our two tubes. Even the rear of the high-level control is shielded. Nice transformer. I have a schematic for this, so we can go over it in detail. But just so you get a kick out of what an original one looks like. I have a feeling most of these have been heavily worked on by the chimpanzees of the Chicago Zoo. Okay, that's it. I'm going to plug it in just for the heck of it and see if it starts up, if the wheel actually will turn. I plugged it into the current limiter and it doesn't start right up. That would have been too much. I would have swooned. But the motor, the resistance of the motor bushings on the output shaft is so great that it's very hard for me to turn the motor output. Seems to me like the anodized disc in the can and that shaft rotate quite easily, quite nicely. Okay, so let's focus on lubricating the motor and freeing it up. Okay, let's watch the motor output shaft now after a little lubrication and freeing up. Spinning perfectly. Dead quiet. The O-ring I think has about had it. It's all dried out and stretched. Let me see if I can't come up with an alternative. Well, I cleaned up that O-ring a little bit. Let's see if it'll work. Oh my Lord, look at that. And we decided, I think on the last video, that that spring's purpose is to make the wheel not rotate at exactly the same speed all the way around, but slower, faster, so you get sort of a wobble in the sound, which gives you the fluctuation in the output tone. Look at that. Is that incredible? I'm astounded. Okay, I just couldn't resist. I've connected this to a really nice old Magnetone mother of toilet seat amp with the Hawaiian motif. And I was going to strum a few chords through it and see if it actually had the effect or if we could hear anything through it. Okay, let's turn it on. There it goes. Well, I'm hearing a squeaky noise that makes me nervous. Let me just strum a few chords. Wow, that was pretty darn incredible. There's a really nice echo chamber effect. The squeaking makes me really nervous though. Is that the rubber heads on a dry disc? I don't think it would be making the effect if the disc were dry, or is it maybe a tight bushing or something injecting some vibration into the system. There's no doubt that that high-pitched squeaking's got to get fixed, but I'll tell you, it sure sounds to me like this jewel works with just some very minor issues that need to be rectified. So let's go ahead and remove the oil can unit, pop the lid, and see if we can see any problems inside, or maybe repair it and lubricate it and quiet it down. I'm running it now not connected to the amplifier, and I'm hearing a mechanical squeak. I think that's what we're hearing. I think the unit itself is going to work okay, but it's a matter of proper lubrication of the shafts and bushings. I removed the organ tone level pot to give me some slack on my wiring so that I'm not disconnecting any wires or upsetting any of them. And I unstapled this little binder here that holds the wires, and then I tilted the oil can unit up so that the can lid's on top. Let's pop the lid and take a look inside. Okay, this is incredible. This thing looks like it's new inside. Also, I don't see any oil at all. I hope to God the squeaking hasn't damaged the disc. I'm looking in here at the disc, however, and I really don't see any serious scratches. I see where it's been swept. Let's double check this, make sure there's no oil in this can. I can't believe it. I don't know where it would have gone. But look at the condition of this. I've never seen one like this. Nope, not a drop of oil in the can. I'm really scared that squeaking was the rubber heads on the disc. Let me pour in some oil. We'll set the unit back up. It can run with the lid off, and we'll see if that quiets the squeaking. Also, if it runs so well with no oil, I wonder if the oil is all that necessary other than for lubrication. I guess we'll see. Sure enough, the squeak was the rubber heads on the disc. As you can see now, it's dead quiet, and the disc is nicely soaked with oil. Watch what happens when I stop it. See the oil run down on it? Perfect. Okay, let's see how it works now with the heads properly lubricated. I have the guitar and the amp plugged in. We've got the unit switched on. The disc is spinning. No squeak. It's dead quiet. And I'm afraid to say that it probably was those rubber heads rubbing on the disc. However, it's dead quiet. There's no static. There's no background sound at all. Now, let's see if we still have that organ tone effect. Boy, do we. That's just beautiful. Let's go to treble. Difference between the bass and treble setting. I pulled out the organ tone level pot. It's right over here. Let me turn it up as high as it goes. That's sort of like too much reverb, I'm afraid. Now we'll back it off. That pot has really excellent control over the amount of the organ tone effect. But I pronounce this jewel fully functional. I'm going to clean it up more. You see, I polished the top of the can, and I'm going to clean it up. But I don't want to mess with this thing. I've never heard one that sounded this good, and I don't want to upset that. Okay, so I'm going to now turn off the camera and proceed to clean things up, and I'll show you when I get through. While I have this oil can unit out and tilted up, I wanted to show you the cleanliness and brightness of all the metal parts. I mean, I've worked on a bunch of these, and I'm telling you, I've never seen anything like this. It's like it's brand new. Generally, these things are corroded, they're rusty, they're in just horrible shape. But this one is just a gem. Seriously, it could almost pass for new if it weren't for the dust over on the electronics chassis, which won't be there in just a few minutes. Alright, I replaced the lid on the can, and gently with a wooden block and a little small hammer, just gently tapped all the way around until it fit back in flush. You don't want to dent it or force it. It helps to lightly lubricate, in my opinion, the edges that are going to be sliding over each other. As you can see, the can's in beautiful shape. So now I'm ready to install the oil can unit back on the board. I use Meguiar's deep crystal Carnauba wax on the control panel, and it's like glass. It's just beautiful. Perfect. Now it's time to clean up the chassis. Alright, the oil can unit is back together and all cleaned up. All the wiring is intact. That cardboard kind of retainer has been restapled. The control panel looks probably about like it did when it was new. Now need to focus on the chassis, which is never going to clean up probably anywhere near as nicely as the can, but we can give it a try. I was cleaning up around the tubes and the tube shields. I see that the two 12AX7s are both RCAs. I'm betting they're the original tubes that came in the unit, and we also see that the rather fragile stamping on the chassis identifies both tubes as 12AX7s. There's not much you can do with this metal. Once it discolors, it's pretty much going to stay that way. It's clean, it's just not all that pretty. Well, it's all cleaned up and working great. You know, I tossed and turned all night thinking, do I want to leave everything original on this, or do I really want to install a 3-wire power cord and replace the electrolytic capacitors? And you know, one side of me says, the purist side says, just keep it original. But the other side said, you know, you can put those new electrolytics under in the chassis, they won't show, and a 3-wire power cord that grounds this whole unit might be a good idea. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. Naturally, the original cord will stay with the unit, but the trick on this is that the chassis and the front panel are connected together. So it's really tough to extract the chassis to work on. What I'm going to do instead is something I came up with the last time I worked on one of these, is turn the whole thing upside down, and instead of extracting the chassis, we'll extract the wood from the bottom of the unit, lift the wood off, and then replace those electrolytics and double check the other components in the chassis. Okay, so let's get started. Step one is unstapling the wire holder here that I so carefully stapled a few moments ago. Now let's flip this over so that it rests on the top of the oil can and chassis. Now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 screws to unscrew and a furry pussycat to pet. What's going on here, little kitten? Restore for affection? Oh, you little girl. So cute. Okay, so 6 screws, and I believe the wood then will lift off. It's rare that something works out better than you expected, but after just 2 screw removals, I could rotate the base with the oil can unit and gain access to the chassis and the circuit. You see here the electrolytic can capacitor. We see 10K internodal resistors. We look over here at the schematic and we see that those electrolytics should be 10, 20, 20 according to the Tel-Ray Deluxe organ tone schematic by a fine chap named Jamie Ray. Okay, but when you look at the can itself, it says 10, 10, 10, and does not use the 4th one. So I'm going to go with what the circuit has because it works so well. I'm not going to mess with success, and I'm going to start rewiring the circuit and disconnecting the can cap and wiring in brand new electrolytics. As luck would have it, I didn't have 3 10 microfarad electrolytics in stock, and I didn't want to skimp, so I went in and ordered 3 brand new F&Ts from our old friends at Antique Electronic Supply. Meanwhile, I rewired the power supply so that it circumvents the original can cap. Now, when I get the electrolytics, one will attach here. We go through the 10K nodal resistor. One will attach here, and then following this white wire through the 10K nodal resistor, one will attach here. So all the hard work's done. It's just a matter of tacking in 3 electrolytics, and the rewiring should be done. And on the positive side, all of the original components are present. Original diodes, original resistors, even the original can cap. So if someone wanted to, they could go ahead and just wire back to this and return the circuit to complete originality, although I can't imagine why you'd want to. Okay, now let's move on to installing the 3-wire power cord that will ground the chassis and make this a safe unit for us to use. I also noticed as I unsoldered and removed the old 2-wire power cord, there is no fuse in this unit. And oh man, much as I hate to do it, I just can't imagine leaving this alone unfused to go up and smoke someday. My only option is to enlarge this hole just large enough to install sort of a vintage looking fuse holder and then wire it in to the primary circuit when I'm installing the new 3-wire power cord. You know, I hate to do it, but I also hate not to. Okay, so I'm going to enlarge that hole with a step bit just enough to accept a fuse holder. So with bile dripping from my tightly clenched teeth, I did the unimaginable and slightly enlarged that hole so that it could handle a old-fashioned looking fuse holder, the kind with a little hat on top instead of that great big shiny cap. Okay, I just thought that looked better. The stenciling is still evident here for the direct signal level pot, so I just think it's worth it. You'd feel pretty silly if this whole thing went up in flames because you didn't put, you know, in a $3 fuse holder and enlarge that hole just a tiny bit. I think it's cheap insurance. And there we have it with the 3-wire power cord, chassis ground, newly installed fuse. Now I'm starting off with a 1.5 amp fuse in here. Bear in mind that the motor has to start, and that's going to draw a little current. But I'm going to do some trial and error and find the smallest value of fuse that will allow the device to work, to start up and work normally. Okay, so that if anything's abnormal, the fuse then will blow quickly. Well, the F&T capacitors arrived quickly. from Antique Electronics Supply, and I have installed them as I said I would. In retrospect, I could have also ordered a brand new electrolytic can capacitor and replaced the original one, but it just appealed to me to keep the alterations within the chassis so that the components that are sitting on the chassis are all original. Now it's time to reassemble this, bring the floorboard back around here, secure it, flip it over, test it, and then put it back into the cabinet for the final audio testing. Looks like the workshop cat's taking a little cat nap on the windowsill. Okay, the whole unit is reassembled, and the little retainer there for the wires is restapled for about the 39th time. So let's test it before I put it back in the cabinet and make sure that it still works just right. The oil can unit and chassis are mounted back on that baseboard, and before I install it back in the cabinet, I wanted to do one last test to make sure that the unit's working properly. And I also thought it'd be interesting to see how the two adjustments, this one and this one back here, affect the tone of the effect. Okay, so first we'll verify that the unit still works, and then we'll try strumming some notes while this adjustment goes from minimum to maximum, and then this one does the same. And we'll see what type of effect those adjustments have on the unit. Okay, here we go. Play a few notes. Well, it seems to work just fine. Now I'll do the same while making adjustments on those two pots. Okay, let's start off with this potentiometer in the full counterclockwise position. We'll go about halfway. Then all the way clockwise. Oh boy, all of a sudden, gain went up. There's just a tiny little bit of turn off of full clockwise between no effect Okay. It seems like when it's in full clockwise, there is no effect to speak of. But when you come off of that by just a fraction of a turn, you start to have more and more of that delayed organ tone effect. Till full counterclockwise. Now let's go full counterclockwise in this upper left-hand pot here on the oil can unit. See what kind of sound we get. Rather low gain, and I don't hear any effect. Put in about a quarter turn clockwise. Starting to get the effect. Another about half turn. Wow. And that's full Okay, this adjustment down here is direct signal level, and I think that is what adjusts, as we saw, the balance between the wet and dry signal. Whereas this one back here seems to have more of a amplification effect. I think it controls the amount of wet signal that's going into the system. Full counterclockwise. No signal, no volume. You can hear it come in. And there's the full volume of the signal. What I think we want then is sort of a 50-50 arrangement here to give us a nice even mix, and then select the volume back here that does not boost the signal that much, so that you won't have a huge difference between the gain that you're getting from the amp when you're playing through the unit or not playing through the unit. Okay, so I'm going to make those adjustments. I think we're ready to put all this back together then in the cabinet with the back panel and everything, and then get Ollie and Jack out here and get them all tuned up, and we'll get a SM57 recording of this the super organ tone in action, so you can get a really good sort of high fidelity impression of the effect itself. And also one final demonstration of the absolute silence of the unit while it's running, which is very unusual for these. Okay, time to put it in the cabinet and begin our audio demo. Well, here's the recording setup for today's audio demo. We have the SM57 aimed at the cone of a Jensen C10R speaker in our handmade Danasonic 5 F2A Princeton clone amplifier. The Tel-Ray super organ tone will be receiving input signals from a single coil guitar and will be feeding into the Danasonic amp. Okay, so without further ado, I think it's time for us to get Jack and Ollie to strum a few tunes. Also, in one of the tunes, I will vary between no effect and full effect several times so that you can hear a really direct contrast of what the straight guitar signal sounds like, and then the signal mixed with the organ tone effect. Okay, so if that sounds good, grab your beer and let's get ready. Also, we got Mitzi here up on her stool, ready to watch. You can see she's not missing any meals. I don't know what it is about moving into this household, but everybody tends to put on some weight. Okay, so here she is. She's ready to sing along with Jack and Ollie. Well, that's about it for this video on the mighty Tel-Ray Super Organ Tone. I found that when we drove the unit fairly hard with a fairly strong input signal, you get kind of a clicking sound. And I think it's essential if you're going to record with this unit, you have to be careful not to overdrive it, okay? You have to kind of moderate the strength of the input signal to the super organ tone. I guess I'll take my usual few moments here to thank all our Patreon patrons and PayPal contributors for their generosity in keeping our channel on the air for another month. I also wanted to thank the fine gentleman who sent me the Tel-Ray Super Organ Tone that was featured in this video. If any of you have any non-working or working old equipment that you're not using, and you would like to support our channel by means other than becoming a patron or through PayPal contribution, old equipment like this is welcome. We fix it all up, make a nice video about it, and down the road probably sell it, okay, and use the proceeds to support the channel. I also want to thank all our loyal subscribers and viewers. We enjoy hearing your comments and responding to you. It's sort of like we're having a worldwide conversation about tube amplifiers and other things that are of common interest to us all. So I guess that's just about it. Nothing more to say, but from Mitzi, the new workshop cat, and I, our best to you all, and we'll see you again soon, we hope, in our next video. Thanks for watching.